3 days before Christmas, the mountains were already buried in snow. Not the gentle postcard kind. This snow was heavy, gray, and suffocating. It pressed against the road, swallowed the trees, and dulled sound until even the car engine felt hesitant to exist. Daniel drove with both hands tight on the steering wheel. Beside him, his wife Mara watched the darkness slide past the windows. In the backseat, their daughter Lily, only 6 years old, hummed softly while clutching a stuffed rabbit missing one eye. "This was a bad idea," Mara said quietly. Daniel forced a smile. "It's just a party, a Christmas gathering. Fresh air, snow, music, a memory for her." Lily leaned forward. "Will there be lights, Daddy?" "Lots of them," he said. He didn't know that yet, but he would soon regret those words. The invitation had come from Daniel's co-worker, a private celebration in the mountains, exclusive, different, unforgettable. That should have been the warning. The road narrowed into a frozen path that looked unused for years. Their GPS lost signal. Cell phones showed nothing but empty bars. Then, without transition, the trees opened. A village stood in the clearing. Not abandoned, not alive either. Buildings leaned inward as if listening. Windows glowed with a dull amber light. Decorations hung everywhere, but they weren't Christmas decorations. At least not the ones they knew. Strings of old keys clinked together where lights should have been. Broken clocks were nailed above doors, all frozen at different times. Chains of teeth-shaped charms, carved from bone or wood, swayed gently in the wind. No wreaths, no stars, no angels, only objects that once meant something to someone. Lily pressed her face to the glass. "Mommy, why are the decorations sad?" Mara didn't answer. Her stomach tightened. They parked near a large lodge at the center of the village. Music drifted out, slow, warped, played on instruments Daniel couldn't identify. The rhythm felt wrong, too uneven, too patient. Inside, dozens of guests mingled, and that was when Mara knew. They were not human. They wore human shapes, yes, coats, dresses, smiles, but they stood too still. Blinking came late. Movements lagged behind intention. When they laughed, it echoed a fraction of a second after their mouths opened. Their eyes lingered on Lily. Always Lily. "She's beautiful," one woman whispered, touching Lily's hair without permission. Her fingers were cold, too many joints. Mara pulled her daughter back. "We won't stay long," Daniel muttered, but the doors behind them had already closed. The decorations inside were worse. Tables were set with centerpieces made of wedding rings melted together. Candles burned with black flames that gave no warmth. Above the fireplace hung a banner stitched from fragments of old letters, love notes, apologies, last messages. Lily tugged on Mara's sleeve. "Mommy, I don't like it." A bell rang. Silence fell instantly. A tall figure stepped forward. Its face shifted constantly, never settling on one expression. "Welcome," it said. "You've arrived before Christmas, the best time." "For what?" Daniel asked. "Forgive," the thing replied. The guests turned toward them, all of them. They tried to run. The village changed. Paths twisted, buildings stretched.
Snow swallowed their footprints as soon as they made them. The music followed, closer now, louder. Hands reached. Daniel fell. Mara grabbed Lily and screamed at him to run. He hesitated. Mara didn't. She turned back toward the sound, toward the shapes emerging from the snow. "Take her," she said, voice breaking. "Don't look back." Something unseen struck her. Not all at once, slow, precise. Lily screamed as her mother was lifted, her body bending the wrong way, dragged by something that had no shape, only intention. Mara cried out once, then again. The sound changed. Daniel carried Lily blindly through the forest, her face buried in his coat, her screams muffled against his chest. Behind them, the village went quiet, satisfied. They were found at dawn, on the road, barely alive. Lily never spoke about what she saw, but she stopped humming forever. Every Christmas after, Daniel noticed something strange. Decorations would go missing, a clock, a key, a ring, and sometimes, late at night, when the snow fell just right, he could hear music in the distance, waiting. Miami never understood winter. In late December, the city still breathed heat. Palm trees swayed lazily under a sun that refused to dim, and the ocean reflected blue skies that felt completely wrong for the end of the year. While the rest of the world wrapped itself in coats and scarves, Miami stayed bare, sweating, indifferent. That was exactly why Alex and Lucas Reed wanted to leave. They had been friends for nearly 15 years, long enough to know each other's silences as well as their laughter. Alex was practical, grounded, the kind of man who planned everything twice. Lucas, on the other hand, chased feelings, moments, memories, experiences that felt real enough to last longer than the heat. That year, as New Year's Eve approached, Lucas had one obsession. "Snow," he said, leaning against Alex's car one humid night. "Real snow, not fake stuff, not pictures. I want to ring in the new year somewhere white and quiet." Alex laughed. "You're talking about Switzerland, aren't you?" Lucas smiled like a child who had already won. "Exactly." Within a week, the tickets were booked. The flight from Miami to Zurich was long but uneventful at first. The cabin lights dimmed as passengers slept, unaware of the thin line of metal separating them from endless darkness below. Somewhere over the Atlantic, everything changed. It started with a sound, not loud, but wrong, a deep mechanical cough that vibrated through the floor. Then another. The plane shuddered. Passengers stirred. Murmurs spread like cracks in glass. The captain's voice came over the intercom, calm but strained. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a minor technical issue. Please remain seated." Alex gripped the armrest. He had felt turbulence before. This wasn't that. Then the engines failed. The lights flickered, oxygen masks dropped, screams tore through the cabin as gravity itself seemed to give up. The last thing Lucas remembered was Alex shouting his name as the plane plunged downward, swallowed by black ocean and white foam. Alex woke up choking. Salt water burned his throat as waves slammed against his chest. He coughed violently, rolling onto wet sand under a sky painted in dull gray. Lucas lay nearby, unconscious but breathing. They were alive. The wreckage of the plane was nowhere to be seen, only broken luggage, twisted metal fragments, and the endless sea retreating behind them. Hours later, as the sun began to dip, a voice cut through their confusion. "You're awake."
A woman stood a few steps away. She looked exhausted but unharmed, wrapped in a torn coat, her dark hair tangled by wind and salt. "My name is Sophia," she said softly. "I was on the plane too." Relief washed over them. Another survivor meant hope, strength in numbers. "There's no signal, but I think there might be shelter inland." With no better option, they followed her. The island felt wrong from the start. The air was heavy, unnaturally still. No birds, no insects, only the sound of their own footsteps crunching through sand and leaves. The deeper they went, the darker the forest grew, though the sun was still visible above. After nearly an hour, they saw it. A hut, small, wooden, weathered, but standing. Inside, the place felt warm, too warm. A table sat in the center, covered with food, roasted meat, colorful fruits, bread that smelled fresh. Lucas laughed in disbelief. Either we're hallucinating or this island has better hospitality than Miami. Hunger overpowered caution. They ate. The food tasted incredible, rich, filling, comforting, the kind of meal that made you forget where you were. Soon after, exhaustion claimed them. They slept. Lucas woke up screaming. The ceiling above him was stone, cold, uneven, dripping. The table was gone. The warmth was gone. The hut never existed. They were inside a cave. Alex sat nearby, pale and shaking, staring at the ground. "What did we eat?" he whispered. Lucas followed his gaze. Scattered across the cave floor were piles of dark, foul-smelling matter. Animal droppings. Their stomachs twisted violently as understanding settled in. A slow clap echoed through the cave. From the shadows emerged something that looked human but wasn't. Its body flickered, shifting between forms. Its face changed constantly, old, young, male, female, never settling. Its eyes were empty pits, swallowing light. "You ate my gifts. Now you belong to this place," its voice layered with whispers. Behind it, others appeared, figures twisted, half visible, their movements unnatural. Once human, no longer. The evil spirit had servants. Time stopped making sense after that. They were chased through the cave system, hunted by things that wore human shapes but moved like nightmares. The spirit whispered into their minds, feeding them visions, memories twisted, fears magnified. Lucas saw himself frozen in snow, alone forever. Alex saw everyone he loved turning away. Sleep became torture, wakefulness became worse. Slowly, their thoughts stopped feeling like their own. The spirit's voice grew stronger. "You cannot leave, but you can end each other." They resisted, they screamed, they begged. Their minds were clear, their bodies were not. Alex watched in horror as his own hands reached for Lucas's throat. Lucas felt his fingers close around a sharp stone, lifting against his will.
They cried, they apologized, they tried to fight, but the hypnosis was absolute. Muscles moved without permission, breath became shallow, pain became real. The last thing Lucas saw was Alex's face, wet with tears, mouth forming words that never reached sound. The last thing Alex felt was Lucas collapsing in his arms, lifeless. The evil spirit laughed. When rescuers eventually found the island weeks later, there were no bodies, only bones scattered deep inside a cave. And in the silence, the sound of something breathing, waiting for the next travelers, chasing snow they would never reach. The road disappeared an hour before I reached the village. Not metaphorically, literally. One moment, my GPS showed a thin gray line curling through the mountains. The next, it went blank, the screen flashing, searching for signal. Snow pressed down harder, thick flakes swallowing the headlights, erasing everything beyond the hood of my car. The forest leaned in close, black branches tangled like fingers. I slowed, considering turning back. That was when I saw the sign. It stood half buried in snow at the side of the road, wood warped with age, letters carved deep and uneven. Karasu, population 214. No welcoming lights, no festive banners, just the sign and a narrow road descending into white darkness. December 29, 2 days before the new year. I drove on. Karasu lay in a shallow valley, houses clustered tight as if for warmth. Smoke rose from chimneys in thin gray lines. Yellow light glowed behind curtains, but the streets themselves were empty. No children, no dogs, no music. That should have been my first warning. I parked near the small square at the village center. An old stone well stood there, capped with ice. Around it, the ground was untouched. No footprints, no sled tracks, no signs of play. And no snowmen. I noticed that immediately. In every winter village I'd ever visited, children left their mark in snow, crooked snowmen, half-formed balls, stick arms. Here, the snow lay smooth and undisturbed, like a sheet pulled tight over something beneath. I stepped out of the car. The cold bit through my coat instantly. A door creaked open across the square. An elderly man stepped out, hunched, wrapped in layers of dark wool. His eyes flicked to me, then away, as if looking directly at me was impolite or dangerous. "Excuse me," I called. "I'm looking for a place to stay, just for a couple of nights." He hesitated, then nodded once. "The guest house," he said, pointing down a narrow street. "Last house, green door." I thanked him. As I walked away, I heard him murmur something under his breath. I turned. What was that? He stared at the ground. "Don't make shapes in the snow," he said quietly. Then he went back inside and closed the door. The guest house was small but warm, run by a woman named Layla and her husband Farid. They spoke little, but they gave me a room and a bowl of hot soup without question. When I explained why I'd come, to document disappearing winter traditions, old end-of-year rituals, Layla's spoon paused mid-air. "We don't celebrate," she said. Farid shot him a sharp look. She lowered her eyes and continued eating. "No New Year?" I asked gently. "Not even a small gathering?" Farid wiped his mouth. "We wait for it to pass." The words sat heavy between us. That night I lay awake listening to the wind slide over the roof. Somewhere in the village a bell rang once. Not a church bell, too low, too dull, more like metal struck by hand. I checked my watch. 11:58 p.m. The bell rang again at exactly midnight. Then, silence. The next morning, December 30th, I went walking. Children watched me from windows as I passed, their faces pale and serious. When I waved, none waved back. A boy tugged his sister away from the glass, pulling the curtain closed. I stopped near the edge of the village, where the forest crept close. Snow lay deep here, untouched. I knelt and scooped a handful, packing it into a ball. A shout cut through the air. "No!" I turned sharply. 3 adults stood behind me, 2 men and a woman, faces tight with fear. One of the men rushed forward and knocked the snowball from my hands, scattering it across the ground. "Don't," he said. His voice shook. "Please." "I didn't mean to." The woman crossed herself. "It watches for that." "For what?" I asked. "For being remembered." They backed away from me slowly, as if I might explode. That afternoon, I sat with Layla in the kitchen, notebook closed, tea untouched. "Tell me," I said. "I can't write lies, but I can write truth if you let me." She stared into her cup for a long time. Then she spoke. "Long ago," she said, "before calendars, before years had numbers, people here believed time was alive. Not days, not hours, the year itself." I leaned forward. "The year," she continued, "was born in spring, grew in summer, aged in autumn, and in winter it died." "What happens when it dies?" I asked. Layla's eyes lifted to meet mine. "It walks," she said. According to Layla, the old people believed the dying year left its body behind, a shape made of cold, memory, and regret. On the final nights of December, it wandered the earth, looking for witnesses. If people celebrated too loudly, it came to see why. If they shaped snow into its likeness, even unknowingly, it found a body. "And if it finds a body?" I asked. Layla swallowed. "It stays." Fareed entered then, face grim. "Enough." Layla shook her head. "He should know." That evening, I noticed the preparations. No decorations, no lights, no music. Instead, people boarded their windows. They tied bells to their doors, not to ring, but to silence them, stuffing cloth inside so the metal couldn't move. Children were fed early and sent to bed before dark. As night fell, the village seemed to shrink inward, holding its breath. Snow began again, thick and slow. I stepped outside just before midnight. The square was empty. The well stood frozen, rim dusted white. My breath clouded the air. Then I saw the footprints. They came from the forest, large, uneven, too deep. They circled the square once, twice, spiraling closer to the well. A sound followed them, not footsteps, but something like snow sliding over stone, a dragging weight. I should have gone inside. Instead, I raised my camera. The cold deepened suddenly, snapping like glass. My lens fogged. When it cleared, something stood by the well. It was tall, too tall. Its body was wrong, its proportions shifting as if undecided. Snow clung to it, but beneath the white was darkness, like old bruises. Its face was only suggested, a hollow where eyes might be, a mouth that opened and closed without sound. It tilted its head toward me and spoke, not aloud. "Do you remember me?" Pain split my skull, images flooded in, birthdays forgotten, promises broken, years wasted, every regret pressed down at once.
I dropped to my knees. The thing moved closer, snow compacting beneath its weight. A bell rang. 1, 2, 3 times. The creature recoiled. From every house, a bell answered, ringing in uneven chorus, not loud, but insistent. The sound seemed to pull at the air itself, unraveling it. The thing screamed then, a sound like wind tearing through ice. It staggered back, shape breaking apart, snow collapsing inward as if something inside had been hollow all along. Then it fled, back toward the forest, leaving nothing but churned snow and silence behind. No one spoke of it the next morning. December 31st arrived gray and heavy. I packed my things early. Layla stood in the doorway as I loaded the car. "You'll write this?" she asked. I nodded. "Without the name, without the place." She smiled sadly. "It won't matter." As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. At the edge of the village, near the tree line, something stood watching. Tall, still, waiting. When the road finally returned to my GPS, the date changed. January 1st. But the snow on my windshield did not melt. And sometimes, late at night, when the year grows thin and quiet, I hear a voice beneath the wind. "Do you remember me?"